Hello, Coach France. Thank you for taking time with us off the block. How are you doing this evening?
Excellent, excellent. Very, very, very glad to be here. It's my first time.
Yeah, I am becoming more and more of a fan of D3, so you'll see how new my questions are. Somebody who has followed Division Three men's volleyball probably knows the answer to this, but I am a student of the game, and I'm not above admitting that.
Okay.
Um,
No.
let's talk about. Let's start with going back last year. The season was cut short, um, and but it was not bad. For you and Coach Pina. You guys were Coach Pina was named the Division Three Coach of the Year, and you were named Assistant Coach of the Year. So, congratulations.
Thank
First
you.
off, second, Coach Pina, what is one attribute that you would say is that really stands out in terms of his coaching style?
I think the best way to describe Coach Pina and his coaching style, or the attribute that I find most refreshing, is the ability to allow people to interject their ideas into his sphere. So most head coaches are very, this is how we're going to do it. This is the way we've done it. This is the way I've done it for the last 25 years. This is the way, and not being able to evolve or shift with the times. And upon my return from Rutgers Newark, he he accepted the fact, before the fact that we both worked together previously. He accepted the fact that, hey, I can run my own show. And I had even more responsibility when I returned to NYU than when I was there previously. And we worked hand in hand to rebuild something in the new championship era. So, because back then when I worked for him, Division 3 volleyball was the Molten Championship. It wasn't an NCAA championship, which changes all the parameters. So instead of having teams big enough and bad enough to beat the Masons and the Penn States and the St. Francis's of our world anyway, it went to, okay, now we have to figure out how we're going to stand pat with Juniata, Springfield, and some schools that recruits that we have typically been going after have never heard of before. So he was open to me changing the recruiting platform of what we were doing, and also open to the new ideas of training that I had from my experiences back at Rutgers. So I think the adaptability, I should say, would be the word, or his best attribute is the adaptability of taking advice from me and taking advice from some of his senior leaders. That is one of his better attributes.
Let's talk about senior leadership. Next question. Did any of the seniors from the 2020 class come back for another year? I believe they were also given the extra year because of the pandemic. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct that once our season ended, the NCAA decided to grant all the spring athletes an extra year. But in our case, of our 6 seniors or 7 seniors, I believe, got to get that right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it was 6 or 7 seniors. None of them returned. They all had jobs. They might have got paused. The business world might have paused their job for a couple of months, but they did have jobs. So we lost a COSIDA All-American, academic All-American. We lost a 3-time All-American. We lost, they all graduated and they all left and they're not coming back. So when people started to ask, oh, well, these guys coming back, the recruiting angle for the class of 2020, the class 21 was asking, oh, well, coach, what do you think about, well, is anybody going to come back? And I'm like, And the first thing I wanted to say was, no, are you stupid? But then I said, no, they're not coming back. They all have jobs. And that's why most people come to NYU, is that they come to get the job in their desired field, and then they move on. And so, yeah, we don't have anybody coming back. And it just so happened that last year's team was seniors, no juniors, sophomores, and freshmen.
Mm.
So this year in 2021, we would have no seniors.
Wow.
So we literally have a group, and I don't know if people have actually done the homework to look, but I mean, if you took out our All Americans that graduated, um, and then you look at our starting center and starting libero, so that's 5 guys that just left, and we have a whole bunch of whole bunch of sophomores that move up to the junior class, freshmen from last year move up, and then the incoming class. I mean, that's a big deal. So we knew that we were going to have a good team this year. We didn't know how good, but we knew we were going to have a good team this year, and we still don't know. So it's going to be interesting to see how the 2021 season plays out.
I'm guessing some of your peers have noticed the ABCA Division III poll came out yesterday, Monday,
Yes.
and you got the NYU team has been dropped from where it was last year. So, do you pay attention to these polls at all?
I've said this many times to anybody who asks me, and it's not going to be it's going to be a very unpopular opinion, but polls are stupid, because in the old days the polls mattered more, because you needed to be high in the polls to be able to get that molten crack. Now the only way you get into the dance is by winning your AQ or being a pool B or a pool C. So there's a possibility that a top 3 team, and in the future, there's a possibility that a top 3 team in Division III volleyball will not get into the tournament, and they'll look around and go, well, wait, how did that happen? I'm like, well, they didn't win their AQ, and they didn't win an at-large bid, and every coach in America thinks they're one of the best teams in the country, but they didn't play like it, so they didn't earn it, so they're out. So if anybody tells me a poll gets a team in, great. If you want bragging rights, hey, that's great. I think that's awesome. And I think that when you're starting a program, that's one thing that athletic directors focus on, is that, hey, we want that team to be number one, and it's great, and the school rallies behind it. But at the end of the day, everybody in the game knows that the only way in is through the channels that the NCAA's made, and the polls are not part of that.
No, I love ripping coach team polls, but I know what it is. It's just entertainment. It's a talking piece. That's all it is.
Well, think about it this way. I'm a huge MMA fan, and they have all these polls and pound for pound and all this other stuff, and I'm like, it doesn't really matter. It's the person who has the belt, and the person who has the belt is the one who kind of dictates what goes on, and who makes the most money for the company, all that kind of stuff. Well, who has the belt right now? The belt is held by the last champion in Division III volleyball. So they have the belt until we deem a new champion. So yeah, it's if anybody said to me, hey, you guys were number 1 last year for the first time since 2012. I'm like, yeah, I know it's great. But nobody remembers that we swept Springfield. That's something that has been lost in the annals of history. That hasn't happened. Nobody's done that to hit Springfield on their court. So I'm going to take those wins instead of the poll. I'll always take the wins over the poll.
Well, let's talk about Springfield. Might be a little bit random, but
No.
Springfield is an independent, Division III independent, so there are challenges of being an independent in any sport, but especially in Division III men's volleyball. Is there any talk, and especially with the travel restrictions and potential for cancellations, is there any talk of Springfield possibly joining the UBC for the 2021 season?
Well, I know that they're a conference. Their all sport conference is with MIT, and I'm sure that MIT would lobby on their behalf, but MIT is not playing in the spring. So would Springfield be able to cobble a schedule together if the UVC did not let them in and decided that they were going to go conference only? Wow, that'd be tough for them. But I don't know. That's way above my pay grade, to say the least. That's an athletic director's. At this point, I think it's not even an athletic director's question. It's more of a president's thing, because Division III. I think at the Division III level, you really, if another school wants to do something in the COVID era, I think, and this is all, I have no idea, but it's now about, okay, so Springfield is a school and they're in a different conference. What are those protocols? And since the UVC is a MPSF, if you will, with 3 different conferences dealing with them, or 4 different conferences, if you will, because I know Grand Canyon's is in one conference. Stanford, USC are in one conference. Pepperdine's in another conference. BYU is in the same conference with Pepperdine. With Pepperdine, so it's a whole different hodgepodge of things you got to deal with. While the UVC is made up of the UAA, which is NYU, Vassar's in the Liberty League with Bard, the Empire 8 schools are Elmira, St. John Fisher, and NAS, and then you have MIT, and then New Paltz is the State University of New Paltz. So Cuomo runs that. So what if Cuomo says, hey, no sports for anybody? Now New Paltz is out. So there's so much going on, that there's so many more layers to this, that I don't know if Springfield is even having those talks with our commissioner, but I know that if they want to play this year, they may have to join somebody's conference, because I did hear some rumors that the Skyline was going conference only. If that happens, then they can't play, because they I think they're not going to play us. We had them on a schedule. Now we're closer to them than some of their conference teams, so that's a problem for that. So yeah, I don't know if Springfield's going to join the UVC. Their regional alliance would be with the conference. Their conference is up there with the NECC. That's closer to them. They're in the same time. They're in the same, pretty much like they're 20 minutes away from Elms, so that would make more sense. Endicott Elms conference, but maybe they get in the Wentworth conference. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out, because we also lost a couple of schools, Division III schools, in the past 6 months during the pandemic. So I believe we lost Johnson and Wales, and I think we lost Cayucas. So those are some casualties of war that have happened, or casualties of the pandemic, if you will. And maybe they would say, hey, for this season, we'll allow you in, but then Springfield's a beast, and they're like, well, we don't want to give up our AQ. So it's a weird thing. But they only need 10 matches. So okay. I think the NCAA has said it's like 10 or 11 matches. So I don't know who they would get them from if they don't join a conference, because there are no other Division III independents. There are a couple.
They're not traveling out to Cal Lutheran.
Right. And
Maranatha Baptist.
I'll say this: you never know what Springfield will end up doing. They could if they look at it that way, they may play a 10-game series, a 10-match series. I doubt it, but there's got to be a way, and you got to figure out where. I'm sure that Coach Sullivan and the directors up there are definitely working to figure out that, but they also have other sports they have to figure out too. Okay. So that's kind of the balance, I think, for Division III as opposed to Division I. It's like Division III, there's that equity that you want every one of your student athletes to be participating if possible. Division I level, they're like, yeah, well, sorry, you couldn't do this, but the money's going to be there. So we're going to go to March Madness, or what they're going to call Indie Madness, or whatever they're going to call it. For men's volleyball, that's going to be a different thing. And then for softball, they'll come up with something. But Division III level, it's usually about equity across the whole sports, the student athletes. So they want to get them all on the field. They want to get them all on the pitch. They want to get them all on the diamond, whatever. So we'll see. It should be interesting.
I hope there's no quiz for me for which teams are on which conferences after we're done. I don't know if I can remember all the conferences that you've mentioned and what teams are in each.
Don't you? I'm not going to quiz you, but I'll say this: the conferences that are there, they're only of the conferences. There are only two conferences that are not all sport conferences. So the rest of them actually exist in all sports.
The other one's the MCVL.
Right. The MCVL, it's the MCVL, the CVC, and the UVC. There are three. Okay. And the rest of them are all sport conferences. So they already have their plans in place. And it should be interesting to see how it all works out. And then I'm sure you've heard some of the rumblings that some teams had a full preseason. They had a full non-traditional segment, and some teams didn't touch a ball, such as NYU. We didn't touch a ball. So it's going to be a very interesting 2021 season.
Oh, I don't know where to go off on this, bounce off of it. There's so many different questions I want to ask you about. Well, let's talk about the pros and cons of being in a volleyball only conference. I feel like the coaches are probably a little bit more connected. There's probably maybe even or they're on the call with each other more often than say in a all sports conference. But at the same time, like you mentioned with the MPSF, there's different protocols they have to deal with. So do you find it a bit of overall a benefit to be in the volleyball only conference?
I think if I had my druthers, I'd rather be in an all sport conference. So, for example, I think the Big West, and I'll just make it easy. The Big West has a little bit more flexibility in how they do things than the MPSF, because the Big West, you don't have any problem with who's playing who. The school knows, hey, we don't like the Gauchos. We don't like the Anteaters. We don't like this. We're going to go to Hawaii. We're going to rip it up. But if you're in a volleyball only conference, the MPSF, all right. So Pepperdine, okay, we're going to play BYU. That's great. Oh, don't we play? How come does Gonzaga have men's volleyball? Oh no, they don't have it. Oh wait, what about this school? Don't they have it? No, they don't have it. Okay, so wait, why Grand Canyon? They're not in our conference. And it gets to a point where if you want the casual fan to love to come in off the street and watch the game, and they're like, well, I know that when I go to Firestone, we're going to see a WCC game. We're going to see them. We're going to boo out Loyola Marymount. We're going to, whatever it is. So the Division III level, could you imagine? So you have your student body who's used to playing against WashU and Emory and Case Western, and it's like, hey, we're playing St. John Fisher. What is a St. John Fisher? And that's no disrespect to St. John Fisher or Nazareth or any of those schools, but at the Division III level, your students don't know who those schools are. So to get everybody excited about coming to the gym to watch us play a conference game, which is really important to us, and a team is highly ranked, they're like, it's not Wash U, so they're not good. I'm like, well, so that's one thing. The fan support is really interesting and different. The second thing is, who's your commissioner? So the commissioner for the MPSF is a guy who's the commissioner, right? But he has to control all of those schools and deal with all of them separately, the presidents and everything separately. But the commissioner that is brought in to an all sport conference has a different relationship with those people because he deals with them in every sport. So the relationships are different. So those are the two things that come into mind right away about the challenges of a single sport conference and a all sport conference like the EIVA. When I was in the EIVA for the first time with NYU, and then when I was with Rutgers Newark, we had these gulfs of differences, like the Penn State Power 5 school with Rutgers, which is a Division III institution, but has Division I men's volleyball. There's a big difference in facilities, money, and everything. So those are things that I think people don't see. They just see, hey, we're playing men's volleyball, they're playing men's volleyball, it's great. I'm like, well, there's some haves and have-nots. And when I remember when Penn State went Power 5, or when they went to the Big Ten, I was just like, oh boy, we're gonna get creamed. And that was when I was with NYU, and we were playing them, and they had TV cameras following this team, and I'm like, wait, they're coming to get some background shooting playing us? I'm like, yeah, that was the deal then. That's what we did. And playing in an all sport conference gives you a different set of beautiful things that I haven't had in men's volleyball. So I'd really like to have it if I could get it.
Wow, that was very informational. Thank you. I mentioned in our conversation before that I have a couple of lighthearted questions, but I wanted to surprise you. So you mentioned that you were an MMA fan, but I also have it on good authority that you're a softball fan. So
I play a lot of softball.
I'm guessing you watch softball. Is that correct?
Watch softball? Not as much as I play it, but.
All right, I'll ask you anyways. If you were starting a team and you could pick any player in their prime, who would you pick?
We're talking softball, right?
Yep.
In their prime, Lisa Fernandez.
Wow, that was the one I was going to go with. I love it. All right. Yep. I mean, you can't go wrong with her pitching or with her offense, right?
Exactly. The other person that comes to mind, Michelle Smith or Kat Osterman. Those ladies were lights out on the mound, and they can control the action. So those are the people I would guess that would be the top three on my list.
My second place would probably be Jenny Finch.
Yeah, you know what? I had forgotten about Miss Finch, but I know Osterman's still slinging it, and I know that Michelle Smith was the bridge between Fernandez and Finch. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Jenny Finch was dominant in her own right as well.
So I know you mentioned that a lot of the decisions in terms of conference scheduling is above your pay grade, but I'll ask you anyways. Do you have any idea, or has your AD or your president giving you an idea of maybe when a schedule might come down the pipe, if there is one?
I think that there's a lot of, it's a really tough thing to say because now in New York State, there are new numbers on COVID-19 um, in our conference. And I think that the easiest way to figure out if volleyball will be happening in the division in on the East Coast or in the Division 3 levels is to just look at the cities that they're in. And right now, I believe that at last check at least, Elmira and the places in Rochester, those two places have 3 teams from our conference, and I believe that their rates were like 5%. Now, where we are in Manhattan, we're at 0.2%. So we're doing okay relatively to everybody else, but you can't play if the other people are really doing that badly. So I think that's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to a lot of the science and a lot of where the numbers are lower and what you can cobble together and what the deadlines are from the NCAA. Like, for example, if the NCAA says you have to have all your matches for Division 3 finished by a certain date, and then you say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to play the only allotted matches between this day and this day, then we can probably do it. But then you have spring break. Now, some schools have said there's no spring break, and then some schools have said we're going to have spring break. So there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to be ironed out. And again, above my pay grade, but I think that the powers that be will lean toward the science and listen to all the experts that they have at their disposal and make some really good decisions. And although I'm hopeful that we get back in the gym and do some things, I just don't know right now if I see a path for us to play. But I do think that if there's a will, I think there may be a way but we need the numbers to come down in those hot spots because there's no way. I don't think we can travel to Rochester. I know that's 5 hours away. And to go up and back the same day would be kind of tough for our student athletes.
Yeah, I imagine so. And another question I have for you: in a normal year, can you take us through how does a schedule get put together in a normal year? It seems like non-conference, there's a lot of tournaments that are involved. Was it last year or the 2 years before you guys came out to play a tournament in Cal Lutheran, right? How does that come about?
That's a great question, and I think it depends on. I think Division 3 is really a unique. Well, men's volleyball is a unique thing because, as you all know, Jonathan, that most of the guys know each other, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? We'll come out to you, and then you come out to us next year, or we'll go to we'll figure out something where, hey, since the big tournament is in Chicago, we'll play you guys this year, but then just give us a trip back in a couple of years, we'll figure it out." So those are kind of conversations that are had. And since NYU is a national university, we try and go to Chicago and or California we go back and forth every other year. We try to. In some years we just can't because there's no partners, but it just so happened that everything aligned where Vassar was going out there, Fontbonne went out there, and we went out there. So Santa Cruz came down to Cal Lutheran. So the 5 schools played matches there, and it worked out perfectly that we got to play everybody once, except for Vassar did not play NYU. So we all played each other. We had enough matches. So it was a tournament, but it really wasn't. It wasn't like, hey, the winner whoever wins 3 matches gets a trophy. Nobody got a trophy. We just played. And Division 3 is rife with tri matches and 3 matches or 4 matches in 24 hours, which is something that the Division 1s don't do. So, and I think it's meaning most of it is because of budgetary concerns and everything else. So if you get an overnight and you can play 2 matches, you can drive somewhere, you can play 2 matches that night, sleep over, and then play 2 matches the next night, and you got four matches, in 24 hours. That's usually a good thing. But NYU doesn't schedule that way. We definitely don't. we don't ever do that. So, but yeah, the scheduling is probably done through friends and something where we, like, for example, when Dan Ames was at Dominican, we played Dan at his place, and we were like their home opener. Their home opener, or their opener for their whole program. Like, we were their first home match or something like that. And then a year later, they came to us. So we just try and figure out how to do all those things and be judicious with our time and judicious with our budget, and make sure that we can do and be good soldiers for volleyball as well.
Related question about budgets. Do you have to do fundraising to for your budget so that you can travel to these events?
Some schools do have to do a good ton of fundraising, and what we have a different model, but I think a lot of things are going to change because we do have a new AD. Most people know this, that the AD that was at New Paltz is now the AD at NYU. So we will have some different things. I am not sure exactly what he has in mind for us, but I'm sure there'll be some changes. But for going to certain things, the budget was always there for us to go to certain things. If we were told no, then we just made an adjustment. But I know that other programs had to do some, like, for example, I know some programs have had to do some ushering at other events. They've had to do, if they, like, for when my friends were at DUville, they would do some concession work at the Bills Stadium, and they would get like $15,000 a year by doing that. So there are creative ways of fundraising and doing that, but we were not part of that. At NYU, we didn't have to worry about that too much.
And DUville is now a Division II program now.
Yeah,
I was surprised by that.
That was a shock to me.
Yeah.
And anybody that I know up in Western New York, in the Buffalo area, it was kind of a shocking thing to me. But I'm happy they've even changed they were the Spartans, now they're the Saints. So and I've had a history with DUville. I mean, going back to my College Mount St. Vincent days, I've had a history with those guys, and it's good. I think it's good for the sport, and I hope that they move forward with good fortune, because obviously Division II men's volleyball, Division I men's volleyball can use more teams, and hopefully they can stay the course.
And hopefully they can develop some kind of rivalry with Damon, right?
Oh, that's I'm sure that's already going to happen. I mean, the schools are separated by 4 miles. I mean, the best rivalry on the East Coast, people would say, oh, it was this and this. I'm like, no, it was Rutgers NJIT. We were separated by a street on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Started NJIT's campus on the north side. I guess the north, I'm not sure if it's north or west or whatever, but on one side of the street was NJIT. On the other side of the street was Rutgers Newark. Wow. Our gyms were 5 blocks apart. The gyms are 1, 2, 3, go up the hill, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's a 10-minute walk between the gyms. Man. That's the most, yeah. So these are things that, don't get talked about, but Should have been. I mean, we had some wars, and it used to be ugly in that gym. But I digress. Damon and Uville will be a lot of fun. Um, it could be. I mean, if it could be as solid as Concordia Irvine and Irvine at some point. Um, so that would be really cool too.
You mentioned earlier that you haven't been practicing with your players, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But have you been able to uh, check in with your student athletes?
Between Coach Pena and myself, we've been able to talk with them. We've been able to interact with them. I have seen a couple of them. We had some Zoom meetings. We've done some, but we wanted to make sure that they got onto what they were doing. And that's one thing that we try and talk to our gentlemen about. And one of them is, and one of the big things are, we want you to go out and do what you need to do for your career. So if they need help, we definitely are there to help them. And we're trying to get some of these guys some internships. We're trying to help these guys get part-time jobs to fill their time up, because that's what they're there for. But at the same time, we had our strength and conditioning room open for a brief moment, and we know that some of the guys took part in that. So it was good to just get back, to working out with other student athletes and seeing their friends and stuff like that. So it's been interesting for a lot of our guys, because we had a transfer come in, we had a freshman come in, they had to quarantine for 14 days. It was a really interesting stretch, but all of our young men seem to be doing well. But we'll see if we can get if we're allowed to be back on the court in the spring, in late January. If they make an announcement for that, that'd be great. But at the same time, that we know that we needed our school needed to use our gyms for study space. I know that at Stevens, I was talking to my friend at Stevens in Austin, and they were telling me that they were using their gym, Canavan Arena, for COVID testing. So those are the things that were happening here on the East Coast.
Wow. Another related question about student athletes. So you mentioned that NYU is a national name, and that's totally true. You have players from all over the country, some from California, a couple last year from Hawaii. So how do you go about recruiting to a D3 program?
I think that we have a unique situation, and I would like to say that it's been cultivated over time. I mean, I've been with Jose. I think this would be 15. 2021 would be 15 years. I've been second chair, and he was doing it before me. I was actually coaching against him in the late 90s. So I would say that we decided on a plan, and we just plotted it out. And we have some intriguing majors that work for us, and that fit into what a lot of people want to do with their lives. So it works. And we had to really beat the bushes, and we have to do a lot of vetting, like literally vetting, like trying to it's almost, I'd liken it to what President-elect Biden's doing with talking to his new staff and all of that stuff. We literally have to talk to the parents, we have to talk to the players, we have to talk to the club coaches, because New York City is a different animal. And the fact that Jose and I both went to high school here, and I'm a native, and I was born and bred here, and he was and he went to high school in New York City, so we kind of get the feel of it. We have to do a lot of that kind of work to figure out if this guy, if this young man is going to make it and not give us the usual problems that you'd have on a college campus, because NYU is not a usual place. So it's a very interesting. I'm glad you asked that question, but yes, it's something that we really, really work hard at.
So you're not just recruiting the student athlete, you're recruiting their character as well.
We have, yeah. I mean, I think, but most coaches are doing that too. But we have to do a lot more of the, because we can't handhold. There's not a lot of handholding going on in New York City. You can't. It's just impossible because there's so many different distractions. For example, when if this is, we'll just say, last September, when you get to NYU, you're a freshman at NYU. You're hanging out with your suite mates, right? And then it's like, hey, you want to go listen to some music? Okay, great. Hey, do you want to get some pizza down the street? $1 pizza? Okay, great. Hey, you want to go to the halal court outside? Okay, great. Hey, you know what? Let's go up to the museum. Okay. All of a sudden, you're pulled in 5 different directions, and you've got to make sure that you're doing the right thing all the time. So we really have to make sure that they are there for the right reasons and not for the wrong reasons. Because if they're here to go to New York City and party, well, then, yeah, you're going to do that. And you're going to end up not being useful to us on the court. And then you're not going to be useful to yourself either, because you're probably going to flunk out or have a really bad GPA. And then your parents are going to pull you out of school. So yeah, we have our own problems too. We have our own issues.
So I want to say 2 years ago, I saw a box score that the Culinary Institute of America had a men's volleyball match. Are they? I forgot who they were playing. It's probably some New York-based D3 school. Are they even D3, or they're just playing? They were just playing as a club team.
Okay, this is going to be awesome. I'm glad you asked, because when I was playing, when I was coaching at Mount St. Vincent, what was I? We were in a conference called the Hudson Valley Athletic Conference. And I'm like, what in the world is this? So I'm coaching on the women's side. And yeah, you play in the Hudson Valley Athletic Conference, and you play against schools like College of New Rochelle. And I was like, wait, what is this? I'm like, yeah, that's what you play. You play against Lehman, and you play against this one and this one. It's like, what? All right, whatever, man. So I think Cooper Union's in that conference. Medgar Evers was in that conference. Pratt
and John Jay, right?
John Jay was not at the time,
okay.
But they may be now. I don't know. Or it might be just somebody to play. John Jay wants some matches. And there were all these little schools up in Westchester County.
Okay.
I couldn't remember all of them, but and we would just go to these gyms and we'd win 30 to, oh no, it was side out scoring. So we'd win 15-5, 15-4, and we just go home. And I'm like, hey, we won a title. Hooray. I'm like, okay, great. So so CIA, Webb Institute, Pratt, gosh darn it, Cooper Union, all had teams. But yeah, we'd never played men's volleyball because we would literally hurt these people. It was that bad. And back then, when I was at Mount St. Vincent, we were in the top 15, or we were on the fringes. You know, that's when DeUville started playing volleyball. I'm like, there's no way we should be playing against these teams. So that's the long-winded answer to your question, is that yes, that they do play men's volleyball. And there's also a team called King's College, the King's College, not King's College, but the King's College. And they also are in that league as well.
And not to be confused with King University in Tennessee.
No,
well.
no. No, not at all.
You had mentioned they had a colleague at Stevens, and we all know that their longtime coach, Patrick Dorowski, just retired.
Mm-hmm.
What will his legacy be?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. Patrick is a person who was really, really about the sport. He was a longtime AVCA Division III rep. He was, along with Gerald Maticata, the since departed athletic director at Ramapo. I can see his face, and I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Oh my gosh. Oh, Michael Risciardi, Michael J. Risciardi, Michael J. Risciardi, Gerald Matakata, um, Donnie Vanderbeck, myself, Coach Byram from Endicott, who's now on the women's side only. Um, Gosh, who else was part of that group? Um, Craig Kolick at Rivier, myself, were all in that room talking about how the NECVA would be the way you want to do it. And it was the visionary of those two men plus Pat Dworowski, and a couple of us just kind of shepherding on, that helped get this Division III thing going. And we kept pushing and pushing with Mike. Mike died, and Mr. Matakata continued to move forward and push forward, and Patrick was there as well. So I think his legacy will be the Division III championship. Was pretty much bore those guys. Those three people were really instrumental behind it. If I had my druthers, I would name the trophy after Risciardi. But you don't do that for the NCAA championship. So, but they owe those three men a debt of gratitude to getting this. A lot of people owe them a debt of gratitude, but also the fact that he did it pretty much without a lot of fanfare. He was a steady Eddie who won a lot of matches and did it his way. And for a while there weren't a lot of teams that were going to travel. Stevens traveled. A lot of teams didn't go and play the matches that they needed to play. So Patrick was one of those coaches that went when he could and played those matches. And his legacy will definitely be, a Division III volleyball pioneer, I would think.
You coached many matches against him. Is there one match or one event or moment that sticks out in your mind coaching against Patrick?
Over the last 5 years, when we got to the same conference again, it was one of those deals where we were going to fight. If we were playing at his place, they would win. I think gosh darn it, I think the last 10 matches were 5-5. So we always knew it was going to be a tough match. We always knew it was going to be a great match for the most part. It was really, if ever, any sweeps. And they became a really strong program over the past 7 years. So I guess the best thing was just the old days. I mean, when we were playing at the Mount in Riverdale, New York, and we'd play the Ducks, and they'd come in. Our guys were amped up. Our crowd was amped up. We'd go to Canavan. Their group was amped up. The Duck Patrol was there and going crazy. So it was always good-natured things for us back then. And we were very happy to play them. And it was always nice to see Patrick because he was a gentleman. He really was a gentleman. So I guess the best thing was that when I saw him, I knew his team would always be well prepared to play. So that would be the best feeling because he respected his opponents always. So they would always bring their best effort.
Suffice to say, he's a AVC Hall of Famer in his future.
I would think so. I know that men's volleyball doesn't get a lot of them, but yeah, I think that he should be one of them. I mean, I guess I get to start writing that nomination now. So yeah, I might get on that in the next couple of days. But yeah, I think he's definitely a Hall of. I mean, I've seen some. I've sat in on a lot of those Hall Hall of Fame speeches, and one of the things is that how many people can say that they won almost, I think he's won close to 700 matches or something crazy like that. Right. 700 matches at the college level, at the collegiate level. And he was very instrumental in getting people together into conferences, and then talking about putting themselves in all sport conferences so they could push forward the NCAA, because to the NCAA for a championship. Now you have to remember that this is something I think gets lost. The Northeast has the most Division III teams for a reason, because they started from the NECFA. So there was a time when everybody played in the EIVA, and then they moved. Even Hunter, people forget that Hunter was in the EIVA, and they moved, and the CUNY started setting up shop. So all those teams started to form, and then they got these grants. They got these $1,000 grants or whatever those grants were to play, to start and form those teams. And all of that stuff happened because of those three gentlemen. So that's the legacy, and that's why you should be in a Hall of Fame. It's not about the wins and losses, even though people like to put that there. But when you talk about the NECFA, you can't talk about the NECFA without talking about Matakata, Ricciardi, and Dorowski.
Wow. Maybe we should just clip this part of the video, make that the nomination, right?
I think so. Wait, who do I have to talk to?
Right. Another thing that you have in common with Patrick is that both of you coached on both sides, men's and women's volleyball.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're on the men's side now. So, why do you prefer coaching men's volleyball over women's volleyball? Not to put down women's volleyball, but just why did you come back?
There. That's hurtful. No. Well, the funny thing is that I've had more success in women's volleyball than men's. I've got more wins as a head coach in the women's game than the men's game, which is a secret that nobody knows until just now. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, well, is that true? I'm not gonna think about it, is that true? And I'm like, I think it's true, but I don't prefer it. I think it's just something that I'm better suited for at this moment in my life. I know the landscape. If somebody says to me, hey, I need, we got to get this kid, I know who to call right away. Like, I can pick up my phone and text message or send an email to somebody right away on the men's side. When the women's side, I'd have to cultivate those relationships all over again. So it's not a preference, because I've coached U16 ladies here in New Jersey. I've coached U17 in New Jersey, while coaching college men's volleyball. So it's not a preference. It's more of a, well, this is where I am in my spot right now, so let's do it, And when I was, the first time I came off winning the Assistant Coach of the Year award, was the next time was I got to coach women's volleyball, because the women's coach at NYU was released mid-season. I took over, and I took over a team that was 5-19, and we went 6-3 down the stretch. So it's not a chicken or the egg or prefer or this. It's just, if this is the job I'm in, then this is a job I'm going to do to the best of my ability, kind of thing.
Okay, fair enough. Another question about men's versus women's volleyball. Anybody who is a novice will know that a big difference between men's and women's volleyball is the speed and the power. But sure, what's something that a novice would not really pick up on that is a big difference between the men's side and women's side?
Angles. The novice won't even notice that the net's lower. they might notice that the net's lower, but they won't realize that the net being lower means that if a powerful women's team came into the gym, they would almost put the skillful team to shame because of the angle, the power and the angles of the ball. It's tough to pass that ball. It's coming on you harder. You have to react quicker. All those kind of things. With the height of the net at the men's level, the power is, if you're very, very powerful, like if you had a BYU from last year play, who, if they played us, perfect. If they played us, it would be like, wow, that's a different level of power and precision. And at the women's level, it's the same thing. So I watched it, and then if you ever, and anybody that's ever coached women's volleyball, and you go out and do some passing reps, it's like, oh, that ball got on me a little bit quicker than I'm used to, because the net's lower. And if you get a couple of athletic women who can touch 10 plus, now the angles are totally different, because now they're 2 feet above the net. That's a whole almost 3 feet above the net. That's a whole different deal. That's not going to be on the men's side. Rarely, if ever, is it happen on the men's side. But I mean, you get a couple of jackrabbits who can jump 11.5. You know, that's fine. But it's not the same thing. And most of the women are very skillful, so they can control the ball better. They also have a depth of the knowledge. They have the skills developed over a longer period of time than men's volleyball players at the collegiate level do, because they've been playing it longer. The boys have been playing other sports usually longer before they get into boys high school volleyball or boys club volleyball. The young ladies might have been playing since they were 10. The guys might have started at 13. You know, so it's a little bit of difference there.
And assuming they played high school football, high school basketball, Aaron Russell at Penn State didn't even play high school volleyball, and so
yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm a certain age where I didn't get to play high school volleyball because we didn't have it in high school.
One question, another surprise, but not outlier hard group one. And I think this might be my last one. If there was one thing you can change in collegiate men's volleyball to grow the game, what would you do?
One thing that I could change to grow the sport?
Yeah.
Oh, that's easy. It took me a second, but I want to make sure I got it right. Oh yeah, that's easy.
Okay.
I would like to have one of these beautiful companies who has all this bandwidth, be it Fox Sports 2, ESPNU, MSG Plus, whatever it is, Fox Sports West, whatever it is, Big Ten, all these, game of the week. It's not hard. Just give us one game a week, and see if people tune in. Just one. We can't rely on BYU TV to be the only aspect of this. Streaming is good, no question. But Fox Sports 2 is showing, I don't even know what they're showing right now. Let me see what they're showing right now. But whatever they're showing right now is, I know what it is. It's the PBC.
Okay.
I'm like, oh, great. Okay, let's see. ESPNU, what are you showing right now? Oh, they're showing a basketball game. MSG is showing the best of the New York Rangers, 1920. Are you kidding me? So right there, we just they're showing old boxing matches. Okay, great. Fine. Whatever. Cornhole on ESPN. Great. Good. No problem. We just give us a game of the week. And And you could say, oh, well, you know, not going to watch it. I'm like, ESPN Plus, when the men's volleyball's on ESPN Plus, I don't know what the numbers are, but I know people are watching it. So just give us a game of the week on one of your crazy networks when you're showing cornhole. You can show cornhole anytime.
Right.
But live sports, you know, where especially when some of the states that you're beaming it to has boys high school volleyball, and you want to, and then you can look at it as a service to the push for the Olympics. NBC should actually be showing these games since they have the contract, but you know, NBC Sports should figure that out because they're showing college hockey all the time, and I think that's great. But I just want one game of the week. That would be one thing I would change, because when college sports television was on, and I remember working with Yvonne Marquez, they were talking about how they were going to do this, and they were like, well, we want our game to be on there, and we want to be on in prime time on the East Coast. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I remember one year I got to call the final. I got to call the final in, I think it was 06 with Mason and Penn State. And I got to be the analyst. And then the next year I was in the booth. I was at the studio in New York. So I think that those things can happen. I'm not sure why we're not pushing for it more. But that would be one thing I would do, is get us on TV more, because there are a lot of young men out there that look like me, also look like you, that don't even know that volleyball is a sport in college. And if they saw that, they might go and join the boys and girls club. They might go join their high school team, their freshman team. It's like, oh, well, this looks like fun, as opposed to, nah, I'll just stay here and play. I'll play Sega. I'll play Power State. I'll play my PS5. I'll play whatever. You know, just that'd be one thing I think we can do.
Great. I think that's and I don't think it would cost the networks that much. You know, it's not it's not like you're going to, you know, try to wire up a football stadium. You're wiring up. Yeah, it's not. Well, thank you, Coach France, for taking time with us at Off the Block. We hope that there is a 2021 season, and we wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it.